Hello random viewers and welcome to another video. In today's video I'm going to be talking about some of the things you might see on an airplane if you're ever flying and what they would be if you're looking out the window. And I'm going to try and clear up a few myths that I hear a lot. I recently took a trip to Hawaii for my grandparents' 50th anniversary, and this footage I've got in the background here is one of the flights. I'm just using this as filler for what is like the intro and where I didn't capture things for the main flight. This is probably the first thing you'll see looking out a window after you've sat down and the plane finally starts to move. It takes quite a while of waiting. But this is what's called the pushback. This is where a tractor or some kind of vehicle will push the plane backwards, and during this process, usually this is where the pilots will start the engines. And once you've been pushed back, you're going to sit there for quite a while until the tower gives permission for the aircraft to move onto the taxiways. And that can take any amount of time, just depending on what the traffic is like, what time of day it is, and things like that. We're now shifting to footage from the longest flight of the trip over to Hawaii, and this is where you finally get onto the taxiway, and you're probably going to take a lot of turns and move in a lot of different directions to get to the runway where you've been assigned by the tower, which you can actually see right there, right behind the wing. Fortunately, we cannot see the top due to the angle of the camera. Now, you may notice that the wings have extended at this point. These are the flaps. I hear a lot of people see the air brakes when those deploy, and I will point those out when those deploy during a landing. You're not going to see them during takeoff. And they'll say that those are flaps. No, they're not. These are flaps where the wing is extended like that, and they are there to provide extra lift for takeoff. The reason you need extra lift for takeoff is because the plane is building up speed, and it's going to be very hard for it to take off with its normal wing configuration, which is designed and optimized for cruising altitude. So the flaps are there to make the wings more effective at pulling the plane upwards. However, it does create extra drag, which is why they retract the higher up you get. During landing, they're actually going to be extended even further than they are now, because you're going to be coming in even slower, because a landing is referred to often as a controlled stall. The whole idea of a landing is to balance it out so that the wings can no longer support the weight of the aircraft at the speed you're going as soon as you're right above the tarmac. And that is a difficult balance to get, but if you do it just right, it will make for the safest and most smooth landing possible. Once you're finally done taxiing, which can feel like an hour, you are going to hit the end of that taxiway and turn onto the runway. And with this recording, we're on the far side, so we don't get to see down the runway, but if you're on the right side of the plane, you actually can see it. Now, the turn can take quite a while. Sometimes there's a little bit of extra taxiway that you have to get to right before you're to the runway, and often you do have to wait in a long line of planes before you can take off, but at this point in the video, we're already past all of that. The flaps shouldn't have extended any further, but sometimes they might. But once you're there on the runway and lined up, the pilot is going to throttle the plane to almost full power. They're not going to put it to quite 100% because that can damage the engines, but they're going to put it to around like 95%. Now, as you can see, the wing is going to start to flex upwards. That's because that wing is now starting to hold almost the whole weight of the plane. With the two wings together, that is holding the whole weight of the plane. And yeah, if you compare this to the beginning of this little clip here, you'll see that the wing is rising higher and higher and higher as speed is built, because the faster you're moving, the more it's pulling the plane. At this point, the plane is moving fast enough for the pilot to pitch up, and that will tilt the plane upwards, further increasing the lift from the wings, and then the lift is going to be greater than the force of gravity, and the plane is going to start to move upwards. As soon as you leave the runway, the wheels are going to be retracted to reduce drag. Now, if you look at the wingtip, like all the way out to where the wing is, you'll see another flap starting to move, or control surface. That is an aileron. You can't see it moving a lot, but when the plane starts to really turn, you'll see it. And that is to control the sideways tilting or roll of the plane. Now, as the airplane gains altitude, it'll also be gaining speed, and the flaps will be slowly retracted. And those are going to begin retracting right about here. And as they retract, you can see that overall wing area is reduced. This reduces lift and allows for the plane to fly more efficiently. You might also feel the plane drop slightly. That's just because the pilot might not have balanced it quite right, because as you retract the flaps, you do need to tilt the plane up further, and that's just because it's losing lift. Now, the plane will keep climbing for quite a while, sometimes for even 30 minutes. And from there it will gain quite a bit of speed and will just stay there at cruising altitude, where air traffic control has selected for it to be for organization or for efficiency. It's kind of both. Now, I did not record video of the cruising because that's quite boring. The footage picks up during landing. This footage here was taken over Los Angeles, and this is about 20 minutes after the pilot announces that they're beginning their descent, maybe even 30 minutes. And these things that you can see opening here, this is what a lot of people think are flaps. No, these are the air brakes. They're also sometimes referred to as spoilers, and I will explain why that is later. And what their purpose is to slow down the plane and create drag. You have a lot of altitude and energy, and that all needs to be removed before landing, because you want to be able to come to a stop before you run out of runway space. Now, these are open here, and you might feel the plane vibrating a little bit. That's because they create little vortexes behind them that create turbulence and buffet the plane somewhat. This footage is accelerated because this is a pretty long process as the plane is slowing down and losing altitude. Throughout this part of the descent, the flaps will be extended further and further and further, and you'll notice that the flaps are going to extend just about to their maximum right before landing, and that was not very common a few years back. But nowadays, almost every plane will extend its flaps almost all the way, because planes are a lot heavier today. And that is because airlines want to save money by putting more cargo and more passengers on board, and all of that means more weight. One of the reasons air brakes are sometimes referred to as spoilers is because they are also designed to completely spoil the capabilities of the wing. When fully deployed, they will completely destroy the wing's capability of producing lift, and that creates a lot of drag and slows the plane down quickly and keeps it from gaining more altitude. You will see that as soon as the wheels touch on the runway. At some point during the descent, the landing gear will be deployed. Once the airplane crosses over that last highway, you'll notice that you're now seeing other airplanes and that you're over the runway and the airport's land. Once the wheels touch, you'll see the air brakes or spoilers open up all the way. That's right about here. And as soon as the front wheel touches, the cowling on the engines will move backwards slightly, if it's this kind of airplane, and those are called thrust reversers. You'll hear the throttle go all the way up. That's because all of the thrust from the engines is channeled forwards, which pushes the plane backwards and further helps slow the plane down. Once the plane is going slow enough, the engines will throttle back down, the thrust reversers will go back into their normal spot so that the engines work normally, and flaps and air brakes will be retracted so that they're in a nice spot for the next crew. Now the flight is over, and that's all that you're going to be seeing moving around on the wings, and just about anything of interest you'd be seeing out the window. The only other interesting thing you're going to see is the plane getting to its gate and you able to get off of it so that you're not in that cramped space anymore. So I hope you all enjoyed. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you all have a nice day, and that you will be more informed and understand what you're seeing more next time you are flying.